Tony DeSere, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Great to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. So, um, I first encountered you. We didn't actually meet on the bandstand, um, but we played together on the bandstand on February 14th. Seems like a lifetime ago.
Yes.
Uh, really wasn't that long ago. Um, Valentine's Day, you did a Frank Sinatra show,
Mhm.
and I was in the Columbus Symphony Orchestra. I was one of the saxophones, and I thought you sounded great. I mean, you nailed all that stuff. Your piano playing is great. Your pitch is excellent. Um, all the nuances there. I mean, and at that point, I started following other stuff that you were doing, and so I became an instant fan. Uh,
Thanks.
yeah, just
Well, and
getting
I remember at rehearsal, looking back there and seeing you on the sax and and then we exchanged a brief little email exchange after. And yeah, that was a fun gig. You guys were a good sax section. I remember that.
thank you,
I was digging it.
thank you. Uh, yeah, I mean, so it seems like you're pretty social. You're pretty social. Actually, none of us are that social right now. Actually,
Yeah.
um, but it seems like you're pretty active on social media. Um, I think that's actually how we got in touch. That was the emailing. I think it was on Instagram or something. And I think I even sent you a message during the show or something.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, um, I think I had a break on one of the tunes, and I was back there doing what I'm not supposed to be doing,
Uh-huh.
and then hoping that you weren't doing what you weren't supposed to be doing and answering.
Uh-huh.
I've seen as part of some of these shows like that bit where uh, the guy picks up a phone, the phone rings and he picks it up and it's like part of the show.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
uh,
on shows, when I have the intermission, or even if I'm doing a show with somebody else and I've got 5 minutes off and I don't have anything else to do, of course I'll check my phone.
yeah,
What else am I going to do?
yeah, yeah. Um, so, Tony, can you tell us about yourself? Tell us how you came up. Tell us what your family life was like. Maybe some early teachers. What caused you to want to do music for a living?
Hmm.
Like what was it about your upbringing? Maybe some early mentors, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Well, I was raised in upstate New York, very rural, north of New York City, in farm country, and yeah, it's called Hudson Falls, the town that I'm from, and I always loved music from an early age, but I didn't have um, really any kind of early training. My dad would come home and play guitar pretty much every single night after work, and he loved Beatles and Eagles and James Taylor and Kenny Rogers. I mean, all that guitar based 60s and 70s stuff. He just loved it, and he would sing it. And so I grew up with live music in the house, and always loved it. But it wasn't, I maybe sing along a little bit, but there was no lessons or anything happening really until in fourth grade. The violin teacher, Stephen Parsons, up there, came in, and he did his rounds through the fourth grade and recruited kids to play violin. And he came in, and I thought it was really cool. And I went home and I told my mom I wanted to play the violin, so she signed me up for the violin rental, and I started violin lessons, and then I stuck with that. I really loved piano though the whole time, not knowing why. I was just always drawn to the instrument and seeing people play. And I begged for a keyboard. I got a little Casio keyboard, with the little, I don't know how many keys, maybe 36, 46 keys, and the little bossa nova buttons and rock beat buttons and
Yeah,
all that.
right.
And I was on that all the time. Then I got piano lessons, and I got a bigger keyboard. I got a Kurzweil K1000. I don't know if you remember those.
Oh, I
Uh,
certainly do. Yep.
so that's what I learned how to play piano on, the Kurzweil K1000 keyboard. And so I was first obsessed with Scott Joplin. I just thought that was magical. I loved ragtime, and then became obsessed with Rhapsody in Blue by Gershwin when I was 12. And I mean, I might as well have been quarantined then, because I just went down to the basement every night and practiced Rhapsody in Blue for a year. And I never really got that great at it, but I got good enough to make it through 80% of it and do it for my recital that next year. And then, so I was really into the mentored by my local school music education programs. I played violin in the orchestra. I played percussion and concert band. So I played timpani and vibes and xylophone and glockenspiel and, and chimes, all those things. I played piano in the jazz band, and then I ended up singing with the jazz band when I started to sing. I didn't start singing until I was about 15. And then by the time I graduated high school, I started gigging, and this whole new world opened up to me. I had no intention on doing music as a career. Even then, even when I started gigging, I went to Ithaca College in Central New York State, which has a great music school, but I was pre-med, and then I switched to business, but I took a lot of music there. And Steve Brown, the jazz guitarist, there was head of the jazz program, and I learned a lot from him, learned a lot about big band arranging and jazz theory. And after that, I actually ended up with a business degree in management. But by that time, I decided I needed to try to give music a shot before I got a real job. So I moved to New York City, and I didn't know anybody, didn't have any connections. And it took me about 4 months, and I as luck would have it, I scored a job at the Marriott Marquis in Times Square, playing 5 nights a week at the Revolving Lounge. They needed a piano player, singer with a keyboard that could also walk left-hand bass and knew a lot of songs. So I ended up getting that gig, and that kind of got me off to playing in New York City. Then I was in an off-Broadway show after that called Our Sinatra, which I was understudying at first, but then took over the lead. I was doing 8 shows a week at Birdland Jazz Club. So when I was at Birdland doing 8 shows a week, after our show would be the feature, big national jazz act. And I got to see all manner of jazz pros, from really progressive instrumentalists to classic pop stylists like John Pizzarelli, and everybody in between, right? And I learned from the stuff that I liked, and also learned from the stuff that I didn't like. And it was then that I really decided that I wanted to be able to put on a great show, like some of the shows that I saw at Birdland. And, one thing led to another. I started to get more buzz around town. I started hanging out at the Friars Club, started making friends in the music industry there. I did a demo recording with Bucky Pizzarelli, the legendary guitarist. And then I got signed by Telarc Records in 2005. And then my record came out. I put out 3 records with Telarc, and as well as when Telarc became Concord Records. And then when the whole business fell apart, I was independent like everybody else, but in kind of the realm of jazz, most people lost their deals. And I went independent. I started making my own videos. I learned lighting and video editing, and audio engineering has been always something that I've been interested in. So the last 10 years, I've pretty much gone independent, and most of my work is playing with, or was anyway, playing with major symphony orchestras as a guest. I also do, solo shows in little performing arts centers. I work with my quartet, and do tours here and there. But it's a great life. I get to do what I love, and since all this happened, I've been making daily videos here in my studio to kind of help spread some positivity and make people feel a little less lonely, including myself, because I get to connect with them, and it's so that kind of brings us up to date.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that series of videos. What is it called?
I'm calling them my quarantine diaries.
Yeah, that's right. Quarantine Diaries. And it seems like one of the recent ones was 40 days in or something.
Yeah, well, I just did day 46 today.
Yeah.
And I haven't missed a day.
Yep. I've noticed that. That's that's a really cool thing. I mean, not a lot of not enough jazz artists, I think, are taking advantage of the social media thing and like really, reaching out to folks and doing consistent things where they connect with audience.
Well,
Um,
it's difficult, and I think certainly before this, I'd always had this feeling that I mean, I certainly for there's some people I know that do it really well. I still, I mean, the fact that I do these daily videos is progress, but there's people that I know that are really, really great on social media. Scott Bradley, who founded Postmodern Jukebox, just done amazing things. And, but this, when I started doing this every day, I started to realize it's kind of like a modern intimate cabaret, and there's an opportunity to
yeah,
still share a performance and get feedback. It's not instantaneous. It's not applause right after the song, but it's the next 24 hours of comments where people share how they felt about the song. And in its way, it's still communicating music in a way that's satisfying to me and apparently satisfying to the audience that's able to listen every day. So, and I love the exercise of getting up, deciding what I'm going to do, doing whatever kind of little practice I need to relearn the words or something if it's something I'm not that familiar with. And then I typically do anywhere from 1 to 4 takes. If I'm lucky, I'll get it in 1 take, but usually it takes me a few. And I just keep doing takes till I get one I know is good all the way through. And I go and do a quick mix and put it out.
something that I've been doing. This started late November. Um, I was kind of rebranding some things that I've been doing, and getting my website going again, and just a bunch of different things. And I hadn't done much with Instagram. I had an Instagram. I've had it for a long time, but I just didn't really do anything with it. Almost everything that I did was on Facebook. And since I'm a university professor, the director of jazz studies at Ohio State, and so as far as recruiting goes, the age of the kids that I'm recruiting, they're going to tend to be on Instagram a lot more than on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do something that was going to kind of show my versatility, something that I could consistently do, every day without it being too much of a drain, something that was not particularly, it was polished in what it was that I was playing, but it wasn't really produced, you know. And so I started doing this thing called hot lick videos. So I just play a line, and it's like a short line, it's a pattern, or like a 2-5-1 or something, and I don't do the thing where I play it slow and then I play it medium and I play fast. I just play it whatever the tempo it's going to be, and so I'm at 145
Oh, wow.
or something like that
Uh-huh.
now. And when you start doing something like that, it's like you know it's something different, and you have to really make yourself do it at first to keep it moving. But then I got to about 50 or something, and then it's like, okay, now people expect me to do this.
Yeah.
And so it's and so there's a little external motivation that kind of gets applied there also.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm a little late putting it out, I start getting messages on Facebook from concerned people. Are you okay?
Yeah. Well, you've become their new routine, and I think
Yeah, and it's a privilege to do that. I mean, and it's my routine. So I wouldn't know. This is part of what's kept me balanced and sane through this. I mean, we've all instantly lost all our work, So one of
yeah,
the things that just like it starts my day off in a great way to get up, get ready for work, and even if I'm just wearing a t-shirt, I'm still like, I gotta make sure I don't look just totally, I got to take care of myself because I'm on camera every day is part of it, and it and then the sense of accomplishment when I get a good take. You know, we all as musicians know that feeling when you finally get the take that you know is going to be something that you're proud of, and then I hit that upload button and send it out, and then I instantly just start getting, you know, pings about that people heard it. It's really an amazing thing that's kept me positive and really made this as enjoyable as it possibly could be, you know, this whole process. So
Yeah, you mentioned, we all lost our work, all of our work instantaneously, like overnight, everything got
yeah,
canceled. And I was, I've, in some kind of way, most of these interviews, we've talked a little bit about the way that this has kind of affected things for folks. I was talking to Doug Lawrence, the great tenor saxophone player who plays tenor one in the Count Basie Orchestra.
oh wow,
And I don't get the sense that, so this term essential workers, now I know what they mean when they say that, but I don't think they understand the sort of connotation, the sort of undertone that sort of belittles people that aren't quote unquote essential. It's not it's not dissimilar, or it is similar to in schools of music and conservatories that will speak of so-called core requirements, and things that are not core requirements are sort of seen as not essential.
yeah,
And so I'm a little sensitive to that. I don't like the idea that such a large percentage of us, and you watch the news, and especially national media, and these cats are still like in the studio that they were in before the pandemic, and they're the ones telling us, and to have good spirits about this, and it's all right, but they're working.
yeah.
And
Well,
we're
I
not.
mean, yeah, it's an extremely tough situation, but I mean, yeah, it's there's certain people that we need, obviously, and we're happy that they're going to work every day, and I mean, I think we all agree that we don't want to be out entertaining large gatherings of people and contribute. That's how I feel. It's like, there's just, it's really it's the reality that we have, and it's what we, I'm just hopeful that we can kind of get back on track eventually, and all these arts organizations can
Yeah.
weather the storm. I mean, that's really what I'm most concerned about as far as economically speaking, after the public health issue. That's obviously paramount to everything. But as far as our work goes, it's like, so far I'm encouraged because I have many bookings that were canceled, many that are scheduled for the summer, fall, and everyone's positively saying, look, we're just, we're rolling with it. We're going to try to reschedule this, and it's not all pessimism, which is a good sign. Now that we're really in the middle of it right now, so we're in the thick of it. So, but yeah, I mean, but we get to do things like this and have a chat on Friday night when we would be normally
Right.
playing in an orchestra together.
That's right. That's true. I think it was Arizona State University has come out and said that they're going to have regular classes. They will not be online in the fall.
Yeah.
And I like to see that. Obviously, our health. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything.
Yeah.
So obviously we have to be concerned and protect people and protect ourselves. One thing I was thinking about was talking to Byron Stripling about this in one of the interviews, is just the idea that, okay, is this thing really going to be the same after everything is over? And if we can say it will be the same, how long do we think it will be until it actually is the same? And but you know, it's things to consider as we're sort of in this period of time that we can actually use to get some things together, maybe some skills together that can help us to weather the storm. So,
Yeah.
which is, you know, that's something that I've been talking to my students about. You know, it's great that we can do this, that we have the technology to be able
Right.
to do this.
Yeah. If this happened in the 1990s, you know, and somebody like me that just performed live and recorded albums in big studios would be completely sidelined, you know, and the technology, you know, allows us to still keep in touch and allows so much to, you know, it's imperfect and, you know, it's not a great medium for music yet, you know, because the quality of the audio, but it's still, but it works and it's fulfilling that need for people. And I think, you know, things won't be the same, but that's okay because things aren't the same as they were even 10 years ago in the business, and in some ways worse, in some ways better.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that's interesting that will probably come out of this is a whole new level of online interaction between artists and their audiences. That, I mean, now that I'm doing this every day and recording a song and putting it out, I don't know that I'll stop when I mean, obviously I won't do it when I'm traveling on the road, but you know, if maybe I'll do it a couple times a week. I don't know. I really enjoy the process. It keeps me performing well. It keeps my skills sharp, because there's a difference between practicing something and performing something. So, you know, I could sit here and day after day kind of practice my skills and obviously get better at certain technique things, work on my voice, and that's all helpful. But combining it all into, like, say, learning a new song, practicing an arrangement, and then actually having to perform it for the camera as if it's an audience, that's something that's really useful. And I really appreciate that we can do that still. And so, yeah, I think, you know, this is an opportunity in some ways. You know, I think we have to view it as much as we can as an opportunity, and try not to try not to just wait for things to come back, because we don't know when it's going to be or how it's going to end up. So I just kind of felt like I hit the ground running with reinventing what I do.
You certainly did. And I've tried to do, you know, a similar thing with these interviews and with some other things that have been going, and like behind the scenes, I'm like, you know, I'm tweaking my studio, and you know, I'm probably buying stuff that I shouldn't buy. Uh, but you know, it's all stuff to try to continue to develop the brand, and you know, develop what it is that I'm doing, and to make it so that when we come out of this, you know, I'll have something else that's got some momentum to it.
Right.
So, was there a moment? Was there a specific moment where you were like, you know what, music is the thing that I want to do for a living? And you explained that, you know, you came to a point where you were like, okay, I need to see if this is going to be something I want to do. But were there some events that kind of came up to that made that really clear to you?
Absolutely, because it just started to become clearer to me that music and performing music was what I felt kind of most naturally inclined to do for one, but the practical side of my brain that wouldn't allow me to major in music, for example, that couldn't justify, you know, because I was getting a lot of student loans and having to go in and sign those checks every semester or whatever. So there was part of me that was like, I can't pay all this money for a music degree. But on the other hand, I knew that that's what I, in my heart, wanted to do. So actually, the moment that I changed from pre-med to, I ended up changing to business. I considered changing to music, but that would have meant I would have had to stay an extra year at least in college. I went to see Billy Joel do a lecture at Cornell University because it was in the same town. I went to Ithaca College. So I went to see him do his lecture, which was a new thing. He's done them in years since. And it was like 3 hours where he just spoke and students asked him questions. And a student asked him a question about, how, because he said, I want to hear questions about the music business, about things like that. And a student asked him, how can you, in good conscience, encourage us to go into music when, it's easy for you to say you're Billy Joel, you're so successful, but so many people struggle and like, how can you advise us to do that? It was kind of like a, pretty intense question. And he said, well, to be successful in music, you don't have to be me. You don't have to be Billy Joel. All you have to do is make music and find a way to pay your bills and be happy. And he said, a lot of people are doing that. And when he put it that way, music was already the only job I ever had. I started playing hotels and bars right out of high school. And that was the money I was using to buy my books. That was the money I was using to pay for pizza, and at college. And when he put it that way, it made it seem realistic. And it made it seem like something I could figure out. So it was that moment. And I saved that ticket for a long, long time. I still have it, I think, in my studio, the ticket from that night, an evening of Q&A with Billy Joel. And that changed the course of my life, because then I switched to business. I started practicing more, and it made it seem like, oh, I just have to make music enough to pay the bills that I have to live. And would I rather make, $100,000 a year, doing a job that I don't love, or would I rather make $40,000 and be happy doing a job? So that's kind of that was the reasoning why I did it. And then I also thought, if I go to New York and there's 100 guys like me like me and better than I am, then I'll get a job.
So what you're saying is you had a lot of money saved up before you moved to New York.
No, I wish. No, it's funny. I was just talking to somebody about that before. There was the point in my life, I think my entire 20s, I always had a negative balance in my checking account. I just, I'd somehow make it, but it was like, how they have the credit lines where if you go below zero, it'll kind of, so you don't bounce checks. And I was always like, I'd never go too far in the red, but I was always like $150 below zero. But I, eventually figured it out.
Taking a risk, that moment when you take a risk, there's hardly anything positive that can happen in your life without the willingness to take a risk.
Exactly.
I mean, you have to be willing to take a risk,
right.
And it's interesting because
but a calculated risk,
right?
Yeah,
right. And believe me, I have that part of my brain also that talks to me quite often. But the like a leap of faith, like a blind leap. No, that's not what we're. But
right.
I mean, I would never tell my students that, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
You can't play all your major scales yet, but you know what? You'll never know if you can make it in New York or not unless you move there.
Right.
I would never do that. But however, if you have all your ducks in a row and everything's really happening and you really need to do this, like you're going to be miserable if you don't do it. I mean, you better do it.
Yeah, well, when I have the opportunity to do master classes and things like that, which I love to do, by the way, and I would love to do for you if you when things get back and I'm back, and because by the way, I am supposed to do with Byron the Columbus Jazz Orchestra next season. It's been rescheduled already. but I'm doing my Sinatra show with them. It was supposed to be in the fall, but I think Byron has moved it to the spring. But I'm looking forward to. And you play in that band, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, anyway, I when I do get a chance to talk to kids or students, I think the bottom line, and you touched on it, I just want to reiterate it, is that if you can do something else and think you'll be happy with it, that's probably what you should do.
Byron said the same thing.
Yeah, because as I think about, like, if there's somebody who's like, you know what, I really love, I love actuarial math, and I love playing, jazz marimba. It's like, so should I do actuarial math, which I love equally, to jazz marimba? I was like, well, maybe be an actuary.
Yeah, yeah. I have said this many times. I'm stuck with music. I would be miserable if I was not, if music was not my life. I
Yeah,
would be absolutely I mean, I don't have a choice. I really don't have a choice.
yeah,
Now, my son, who is 6, he has a choice.
yeah. I have
or
I have
or
a
maybe.
6-year-old too. I didn't know we both had 6-year-olds.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But boy, or.
Yeah, he's 6.5. He'll be 7 in September.
Oh, mine's going to be 7 in August.
All right, so we got about the same age.
Yeah, yeah, same age. What's his name?
Christopher.
Oh, my son is Moses.
Moses, great name.
Yeah, Christopher's a great name.
Yeah,
Uh,
strong name.
yeah, yeah. I knew I liked you. So, uh, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, but my son, he has a choice, or maybe he won't have a choice, and maybe he develops that passion for it. But I never thought I was going to do anything but music from the first
Sure.
notes that I played. I was just so possessed by it.
Yeah,
And I've got some great musician friends, and they have kids, and in our conversations, often we say, I really don't want my kid to be a musician because it's so hard. It's such a
yeah,
challenging thing, to be. Now, again, I'm not trying to talk. Well, maybe I am trying to talk people out of being musicians. Um, Maybe that's some good sober, think about this and be clear on what it is, because it's going to be challenging. But I'm also
well,
here to encourage folks that
yeah,
if music is what you really want to do, you can thrive as a musician.
yeah. Well, and I would think, as your role as director of the jazz department would be to be a mentor that both encourages and introduces some reality to people, because you know what, even though, if you see someone that may be best put gently in another direction, as tough as that conversation might be, I would imagine that person would be thankful, that, it all depends on how you, of course, how you handle it, you
Right,
know.
right.
Yeah, but I remember, when I started in college, I didn't have a lot of formal training, and so when I played in the jazz band, and and still I'm very self-taught. So, but I remember I won't say his name. We had somebody come in to do a master class, and he said, "Okay, let's play Autumn Leaves," and then he said, "In which key?" But I just thought, I thought he meant the first chord, because Autumn Leaves doesn't start on the tonic chord.
Ah, right.
So so it started, and I obviously was, he was like, but, and I was like, blah, got like just way off, and he stopped, and he humiliated me in front of everybody, and it's like, and I thought about that whole thing. It's like, that was not the right way to handle that.
No.
Um, the way to handle it was to turn it into a learning moment, and so, like I said, at Birdland, when I was learning from both great acts and people that weren't great, you learn what not to do as well. So, I learned from that example. It's like, well,
As a teacher, that's something that you're not going to do.
Right. As a teacher,
Right.
and
Right.
you know exactly why. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
you use it as a learning moment to say, hey, oh, I know why you did that, because autumn leaves, does not start, when I say the key, and I was a freshman in college. So it's those types of things that add up over the years, that, when you teach, or when you're giving wisdom to people that are starting out, that you learn from those things. So
there was a time when that sort of thing was a lot more common, and it's likely that that probably happened to that person.
yeah,
That whole kind of trying to, it's almost trying to create sort of hard knocks in an academic setting, and it's like,
yeah,
I kind of, I sort of understand why you would think a certain thing, but that's not really what, you can't really do that. At least not these days. You can't really do that. Parents will get involved so quick.
uh,
It's just, yeah, it gets dark really fast.
yeah,
Plus, you so turn people off, and maybe you have someone that is destined to be a great, musician, someone like yourself, and what if you knock them off of being a musician
yeah,
because they were so turned off by that experience? Um, I remember, uh, it wasn't until I was in college that I knew I wanted to be a teacher, and uh, that was because, um, when I was a kid, starting at 12 or 13 or something, I was teaching lessons, and I just had some students that they just, it was like they weren't practicing, they weren't doing what they were supposed to do, and it kind of hurt my feelings.
yeah,
And I knew that I didn't want to feel that way or have that experience. Um, and so it took a long time for me to, like, readjust and figure out that, wait a minute, teaching isn't the issue. The issue is nobody wants a funky student.
yeah,
Nobody wants somebody that won't practice and you know, won't do the stuff that you tell them to do, they ask them to do. It might actually be an indication that you're supposed to be a teacher,
yeah,
that you're annoyed by that, and so
yeah.
then it causes you to try to find different ways to try to keep your students engaged. Um, um, Speaking of teaching, um, something that is implied there is practicing,
Right.
and I want to ask you about uh, what you practice. Now, you gave us a little bit of a look under the hood when you talked about a few takes before you upload something, and that the preparation to get it together so that you could get a good take,
Yeah.
to upload, and that being a day in day out kind of thing. And so I think that demonstrates a routine, practicing. I mean, you have a specific agenda in mind. Are there other things that you're practicing, in? How is your practicing different now than it was a few months ago when you were on the road more often, and then when you were a kid and you still were working out
Right.
your major scales and stuff?
Well, I had such a, probably in comparison to most other people, an odd development in that, because I wasn't, because it was just a hobby for me even when I was in high school. I mean, my focus was on, I was like a nerd. I was good in school. Music was a side note to me. I loved it, but I didn't, I played for my own entertainment all through school. I was not, I did, and when I took piano lessons, I never, I mean, I didn't practice what I was given to practice. I was practicing ragtime and starting to learn jazz, and my teacher was not a jazz piano teacher. There was not that resource available, where I was at that time. The nearest jazz teacher was that I knew of was in Albany, New York, which is an hour drive away. So it's an interesting thing because somehow along the way I've played enough to get, you know, passable at all these things, but I'm always regretting that I didn't have the discipline to go through and play all the scales and do that, because I know how much it probably would have benefited me. And what's happened now, I mean, since I've been on the road since 2005 and have gotten extremely busy in the last 5-6 years, I barely, I mean, there's not time to put my hands on a piano. I can't carry my instrument around with me. So often in most weeks, the only time I play is at sound check and rehearsal and the show, which is unfortunate and doesn't serve my playing very well. But my time now to be at the piano is every morning when I get up and figure out whatever arrangement I'm going to play. I mean, there's the only piece that, you know, where I do actually practice and I still keep up is Rhapsody in Blue, because I play that with orchestras and I'm terrified of that slipping out of my fingers in a way that's going to embarrass me in front of an orchestra. So I keep that up as best I can. I play it, you know, I was playing it every day as I was ramping up to doing it, and now just to maintain it, I play it like once a week. But the thing that I think has happened with me is that I kind of, since I had so many interests, I'm practicing a lot of different things, whatever interests me at the time. So there was a time when I got into making videos. So I would spend, you know, a couple hours a day watching YouTube tutorials about 3-point lighting, about using shooting on a green screen, about Adobe Premiere skills. There's other times where I'll watch, you know, when I'm on the road, I'll watch tons of tutorials about how to use different EQs and compressors and shortcuts in Cubase. Then, you know, for my arranging, like, well, for example, tomorrow, Chris Walden, I don't know if you heard about this. Chris, do you know Chris, the arranger?
Yes.
So Chris Walden is doing a 3-week masterclass on arranging for big band and strings. Mm. And he's arranged for, you know, Diana Krall, Michael Bublé, tons of
right. That's why I know that name. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and he's offering this masterclass for $100 for the whole thing for 3 weeks. So I signed up for that, and that's kind of how I've learned everything. You know, like I'll learn. I've had the privilege to work with so many talented people in different ways, whether performing on stage with them, other piano players. My good friend Ted Firth, who I grew up with, is probably the best jazz accompanist for vocalists right now. He plays for Michael Feinstein full time, Brian Stokes Mitchell. He arranges for big orchestras, and, you know, so I'll, you know, when we hang out, when we have time, he'll show me something, and there's things that I remember and I try to incorporate. And then there's things that, just little things I pick up here and there. Like one thing that comes to mind, there was a graduate student that was helping Steve Brown out at the jazz department, and I just remember one day he showed me how to just do the. So that little thing, that little motif is something that I just incorporated enough so I could do it in different keys. And I just, you know, it's just one of the things that's how I've learned along the way. It hasn't been an organized path, but so I'll get into so I started doing orchestral arranging and movie scoring. So during that period, when I wanted to figure that out, every flight I was on, I was studying John Williams scores, constantly listening, and then I started arranging using Finale and Cubase to mock stuff up, and learning instrument ranges. And it kind of goes from thing to thing. So during that time, I won't play piano at all. I mean, as far as, you know, practicing technique. I'll just, you know, be playing piano as it serves me to put notes into Finale, you know, doing like a, you know, just stuff like that. So it's really scattershot, but it's worked well enough to kind of do the projects that I want to do. I do sometimes feel like a jack of all trades, master of probably none, but my goal is to be jack of all trades, master of a few.
So you're practicing has been, I mean, and I'm listening to you, it's like very organic. It's like it's always sort of project oriented.
Yeah.
Like you're gaining skills that you need to do the
To
job.
do what I want to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's it's very directional. It seems like it's very efficient too, because you're not sort of wasting time acquiring skills that you're not going to use. Um,
Well, and it's hard to like. I mean, like I love the idea of learning a bunch of bebop licks in different keys. Like I love, my brain loves the idea of having that at my fingertips. But the reality is, these days when I'm performing, especially orchestra shows, I take one jazz solo in the whole evening. So it's like if I did work on that thing, where am I?
it's a
Where am
great solo, by the way.
I? Thank you. But you know what I mean. It's like there's a lot of things that So rather than do that when I have time, because it's a busy life. It's a lot of traveling. I have my son, my wife, and But I do wish. I've always wished that I had more of a repertoire of learning the classics and kind of a more formal jazz education, because there are holes there in my in my knowledge. But I mean, I've been at this long enough to be able to exist on a pro level, and I can speak the language of music. I mean, and now arranging for the orchestra, I've really become familiar with a lot of terms of music, and also transpositions, instrument ranges. So, and also what happens to me, and I think to people, when you listen to a lot of stuff and get into it. When I used to hear the Star Wars theme, for example, it was just pure magic to me. I had no idea. It was like, to me, just like millions of notes on a page and incomprehensible harmonies. And then now I hear it and I just hear it's a B flat chord, and it's like I can hear where everything is. I can tell the French horns from the trombones and the cellos from the violas, and that where before it just sounded like one amorphous piece of magic. So things like that have helped me a lot too, because music is music. So to me, when you're learning, there's nothing that's helped my arranging skill at piano. Let me get that clear. There's nothing that's helped my piano playing, accompanying for myself, more than learning how to arrange for orchestra and big band, because there's certain discipline of when I'm actually putting the stuff in finale and making sure that the voicings and the voice leading is good, which I never thought about when I just was playing piano bars and stuff. I was just, I'm just playing a G-7 chord, kind of in a, however I was hearing it. But now I kind of think more in a more complete way, and can even kind of think in terms of an arrangement. So, I mean, because I think of what I did today, what I do, Moonlight in Vermont. So there was like one moment, so it's like I think the warbling of a meadowlark or something. And I heard it as a flute run in my head, so when I'm like, as it goes up and down. So all those things, I never would have done that before until I knew how to write a flute run and what that would look like. So anyway, that's kind of the long and short version of kind of how I've approached trying to get better.
So you a couple of things in here, and I want to ask you about each of these. So I want to kind of see them first, so we can kind of keep track of them. One of them, you were talking about basically studying technology. You're talking about video software, Adobe Premiere, for instance, which is not user friendly, by the way.
Right. Big learning curve. It's an amazing program, but a huge learning curve. Yeah.
Yeah. You talked about green screens, taking, 3-point lighting. I mean, you were talking about stuff. So, I mean, even the jargon that you're using to to explain this. I mean, it tells me that you really know that stuff well. And if you're watching all these tutorials and everything, it takes a long time to learn how to do certain things. I mean, I totally, I totally understand that.
Yeah.
Something else that you mentioned was about your family. Uh, you know, you tour a lot, and so I want to know how you balance that, because um, that's a really challenging thing to do as a musician, and I think it takes a special spouse to understand a musician, and especially if the musician is in sort of transitional stages where you know everything isn't quite together yet, and they're still kind of struggling to pay the bills and everything else, and
Right.
you know, and even like the understanding like the psychology of someone that wants to practice 5 hours a day for a gig that pays $50, you know. That whole thing, it just takes it takes a special person to understand that and to support that.
Absolutely.
um, and then the other thing I wanted to ask you about was your singing. So we've been talking about your piano playing and your arranging. And by the way, I mean, we played together on that gig, that Columbus Symphony Orchestra gig, that Frank Sinatra Valentine's Day thing. That seems like it was like 5 years
Yeah,
ago.
I know.
Um, and I'm looking at the charts and I'm seeing, arranged by Tony Desari, orchestrated by Tony Desari. And I'm like, okay. These are really, really great arrangements. So all the stuff that you telling me that you're doing this stuff, all of this stuff at a high level. Um, but if
Well,
we can, yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
Well, I don't know. Well, some of those charts, that was the Sinatra and Beyond show. So the
Yeah,
chart from that show, that's when I was developing that show. I was just starting to get more into arranging. A lot of those were co-arranged by Ted Firth, who I told you about before.
right. Now I remember seeing his name on there too. Yeah,
Yeah. But I have since written arrange. But you know what it is? It's just I'm stubborn about not stopping until I can do it. And
yeah,
at least even if it's not like, Vince Mendoza or something like, or Nelson Riddle, or, it's, I want to like it first. And it takes a lot, for me to like it. So I, I could hire somebody to do the chart and they'd probably do it in 3 days. If it takes me 3 weeks, I don't care. I'll do it. And when I get into the mode of working on a chart, it becomes my life, and I kind of become obsessed with it. So, and I'm not afraid to arrange 8 measures and then completely erase it and start over again. But it's that process that, and what I found, and so I've been doing this type of approach to things long enough, where I know myself well enough that there's going to be a point where I start to understand it better. And at first I was mocking up every single thing I arranged because I was so paranoid about, like, say, getting in front of the Houston Symphony or the Columbus Symphony and passing out a chart. I don't know how exactly it's going to sound and balance out. So for a while, and when I was arranging, I have my sample library and I'd mock up every single part, mix it, and just to make sure it's going to sound like I think. And then something happens, and it's an amazing thing about the human brain, right? That after you do it, after I did 3 or 4 charts, I could just start to, you start to get familiar with how the instruments sound in the range, how nimble they are, what they can do, what they can't do. And you can start to actually look at the page and hear how it's going to sound. And that type of thing keeps me going. And it's those types of breakthroughs that keep me interested in what I'm doing and make me feel like, there's still like a world of endless possibilities out there. So it's, yes, but I don't think of it as it is painful while always getting better, always trying to get better. There's a pain in it, but there's such reward that I'm kind of addicted to that reward.
So talk a little bit about. Can you talk about your family a little bit, and
Yeah,
maybe
sure.
how you? I mean, like I said, it's really tough to balance I mean, I
Yeah.
struggle with it. Um,
Well, yeah. So, well, first of all, I met my wife when I was already on the road, pretty
mhm.
much. Not as much as I have been the last 5 years, but I was already going, at least 3 times a month somewhere for a day or two. So I was already kind of in the mode. And by the time I met her, I was kind of off the ground as far as like, I had 3 records out on a, major jazz label, and there was like some kind of credibility to what I was doing, for her to kind of get on board with it. Um, but yeah, I mean, especially when you have a child, I think you'll agree that everything changes because,
Yeah.
that's, even probably the best illustration for how painful it can be is right before all this got canceled. I was embarking on a 3-week tour of the Midwest with a trio, and the day before I left, and I kind of had to, break it to my son that I'm going to be gone longer this time. I'm going to be gone 3 weeks, and he was, he tried to hold it together, but he was crying, and he wanted me to stop playing music, and and
Yeah.
he wished that I could just be home and quit playing music, and you know why do I want to do that more than hang out with him? I mean, he's 6. That's I understand, and it's heartbreaking for me, but uh, but so there's that, which is about as bad as it gets. And also the other thing is like, all the downtime, like that Elton John song, time on my hands could be time spent with you. I guess that's why they call it the blues. Like when I'm on the road, I'm only performing for the 2 hours I'm on stage, or the 2 shows that I'm doing. The rest of the time, I'm in the hotel room completely isolated, and maybe I'm in like northern Canada in January, and it's 30
Yeah.
below zero. So there's a lot of time where it's very, I think it's harder for me than it is for my wife and son, because there's so much time that I'm just alone waiting to do my show. And I do my show and I love it, and then it's a whole nother day of travel and waiting for airplanes, and I get home, and then I'm home for a few days, and then I go again. But I think the silver lining to it is that, when I'm home, I'm home. I'm really, I have nowhere else to be.
Mhm.
And if I get home on a Sunday and I don't have to leave till Thursday, I'm available, and I can hang out with my son, and we can do things as a family, and it kind of makes up for it. I mean, because I could have a job where I leave for, I have a 90-minute commute, and I work a 10-hour day and get home late and go to bed, and that could be a life too. I mean, that all has its challenges, but it is tough to balance. And I will say that now, being home for 40, 47, 48 days, I've never had a routine, and it's really much more agreeable to my soul and my body to have a routine where I get up at the same time, go to bed at the same time, kind of, and have this kind of more peaceful existence where I'm not always on the spot and having in a high pressure performance situation. And that, it's been very good for my physical and mental health to have this break. I mean, as long as I don't think about not working ever again.
Right. um, you know, uh, my son is the same way, uh, and I frequently tour with the Count Basie Orchestra,
Oh yeah.
and those tours are pretty rigorous.
Yeah.
And so one of the tours I did was a 2 week tour, and I think was he 5? I think he was 5 at the time, but he had a hard time with that. It was I mean, he was crying and carrying on when, and we get on the phone and we talk, and it seemed like it was a little bit better, and he'd be up in spirits. And one of those tours, the it getting back got delayed because it was let's see, I think it was in Canada, and so I had to go to Toronto or something, and it was during that big ice storm. I'm trying to think of when it was. I don't remember exactly when it was now, but it was a big ice storm, and so everything got canceled, and so I was out for like an extra what 1 or 2 days, and
Yeah.
that was worse. That was worse than the fact that I was going to be gone for. I think that tour was like a
Yeah.
week. Anyway, that was like worse. Um, and but yeah, that's a kind of a it's really is a heartbreaking kind of thing, and and then the whole thing of like hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
That's
Touring is
what it is.
hurry up and wait.
That's
Yeah,
what it is. Yeah, and
yeah.
it's not natural for humans to exist that way, to be always in between time zones. I mean, I do love it. I love doing shows, and there are definitely fun parts to being on the road, but I don't know.
I
It's
think
just
people.
what's the character.
I don't think people understand that it's a job. I just don't think that they get that. And that's something that I've had conversations with folks, and it just shows me that they don't have a perspective for it. It's like, man, well, if I could just be out traveling and doing X, Y, and Z, I'd certainly do that. I mean, you have it good, and like this, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I have it good because I'm doing what I love to do, and
Yeah,
that's no question about it, and I'm stuck with this. So that's all I can do, you know.
yeah,
But don't get it twisted though, because there's a definite benefit of being able to be home.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, and then also I want you to talk about singing. So what are you doing with singing? Like, do you? I mean, do you do like vocal exercises? Have you had vocal coaches? Um,
Singing is the thing that I've had the least amount of professional intervention, and it's just something I started to do. I started to get into jazz, and at the time that I was getting into jazz, Harry Connick Jr. was super famous at the time, and I related to that. Um, and I just started at first just singing songs that Harry sang, and but it wasn't something that was I thought about getting instruction for. I wasn't in choir or anything like that, and in much like what's happened with certain things with the piano, I've had the great privilege to work with amazing Broadway stars. I mean, and encounter these great singers, and they all have different approaches. So I just have conversations with them. It's like having a master class with somebody that's had years and years of vocal training, and I hear how they warm up. And but I don't, like, for example, when I do my daily videos, I just sing the song a couple times till I feel like I'm ready to record it. There's not like I think part of it is the style of singing too. It's a very, if I was singing, Freddie Mercury style, or, a female vocalists have to always be singing on their break, between falsetto and their belt. They have to like get that whole machinery oiled up. But for me, it's like, I just feel like I work with whatever I have that day. And I don't really do anything, nor I've never taken one voice lesson. But I've asked people and kind of check in to make sure I'm not doing anything wrong. I mean, I can sing for, I used to sing for 4 hours a night, and, I didn't lose my voice, and thankfully, knock on my piano, I never got a vocal note or anything. So I don't know. It's just one of those things that I just love to sing, and I've learned songs from recordings, and I've got whatever. I've focused a lot, and I appreciate you complimenting my pitch, because my pitch is something that drives me crazy all the time, because I can hear whenever I'm even a little bit off, and it just drives me nuts. And if I record something and I'm a little, and I hear that it's like I get so down on myself, but and I'm just, so that's mostly when I'm singing, I'm just thinking about I just want to nail the pitches.
well, you sound great, man. and you're a fine musician, and I mean,
Thank you. Thank you. Well,
and
it's just, I just love it. And I don't know, I just try for my own, first my own entertainment to try to get good enough where I can tolerate myself, you know?
obviously it's a high standard to tolerate yourself then, for you. um, okay, so can you talk a little bit about maybe some highlights in your career? Maybe some musicians that you've played with or collaborated with, or particular shows, maybe even that you've done where you were like, you know, you know, if this is my last show, I'd be fine. It's
Yeah.
just everything just really.
Well, first of all, now that I've, somewhere along the line, I went from being the young new kid on the block to all of a sudden having about 25 years experience, doing live shows and performing, and being on the road for 15 of those years. So there's a lot of highlights along the way. I mean, I think of, it's kind of like the first time you kind of break into a new level that's really, really leaves an imprint. Like, when I was first starting out, the first time that I played a gig, you remember that, and the reaction of people. And then, moving to New York City, and when I got that off-Broadway show, all of a sudden I was in a realm of the business I'd never been in before, where, shows were getting reviewed by the New York Times and the press, and, other, the celebs would come see the show that were in town, and, started to meet people. And then when I got my record deal and started to play these jazz clubs that when I first moved to New York, I'd walk by a club like the Blue Note, or I'd walk by Birdland, or, and like, I couldn't even afford when I first moved there, I couldn't even afford to get a ticket to go see a show. And I'd walk by these places and it looked so like Fort Knox,
Mm-hmm.
There was something about it to me. It's like, I don't know how I'm ever going to, work there. And over the years in New York, I crossed off every single one of them. I've worked there in some form or another. So, and then of course, the first time you do it, it's a big deal. I mean, the first time I did Carnegie Hall was 10 years ago. And, that experience was also like, it's a concert hall like anywhere else, but it's Carnegie Hall. So when they open that big, heavy wooden door and you walk out, and it's like, that feeling of like, I'm on the stage at Carnegie Hall right now about to sing with a huge orchestra. I mean, so 10 years ago when I started working with orchestras, that was a big deal to me. And then one of the coolest things that happened to me too, because, I loved that generation of entertainers that Frank Sinatra was in, and Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr. I opened for Don Rickles several times in Vegas. And did you ever play in his band?
No, I didn't.
No. Okay. Because he hired bands wherever he went. Yeah. And he had a 13-piece band that did his whole show. It was a very old school Vegas show. And I would open for 35 minutes before he came out. And it was, I got to work these beautiful Vegas rooms, that I would never be able to play on my own. But, Don's a huge star, and I got to do it with a big band. And I got to become friends with Don before he passed. And it was really, really, just great to have a connection to that generation that I so admire, as far as like, just how good they all, I mean, the thing is about that generation, and the thing that's a challenge for our generation and performers like me, is those guys like Frank Sinatra and Don Rickles, I mean, and the people that played in those bands in Capitol Studios in the 50s, it's like, guys can't play like that anymore, or sing like that anymore, because it's not because they're not talented. It's because they did it every day, several shows a day. I mean, it was playing for album sessions at Capitol Studios was an 8-hour-a-day job back then. You did a session in the morning and maybe 2 sessions in the afternoon and maybe another one at night. And they all played together. They understood the acoustics of the room. They just did it so much. And and people like Frank Sinatra and Rosemary Clooney. I mean, they did 4 or 5 shows a night, night after night, for, you know, and you just can't get that type of experience anymore. So it was really cool to work with somebody from that era that was just so good. Even into his 90s, to watch him work, to watch him be able to, you know, he had a lot of health problems, and he kind of like, you know, I'd kind of see him before the show. They'd even kind of wheel him around, and I'd be like, I don't know if he's going to be able to, you know, he's got like 2,000 people out there, and he's obviously not feeling well. And he'd watch me from the sidelines while I did the opening act. I'd see him there sitting in his chair with a towel, a thing of vodka like this, just straight vodka. And then I get done with my thing. He comes out and he kills it. He kills it for almost 90 minutes straight. And
I guess he needed that vodka.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just to me, it's like, that's show business. Like, that guy he just got out there and killed it every single time, right up until, you know, he couldn't perform anymore.
Yeah, it's so much great music from them. So shaped the way that we think about music, and think about music the way it ought to be done, you know?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, too, it's just such a lost art to arrange something that's meant to be performed live, that needs to work all live in one room with the drummer next to the bass player, next to the trumpet section, next to the trombones. And the way, you know, they only had like 4 microphones, and they found a way to make it sound like they did. And now, you know, today we've got all these studios, everybody's isolated, and it takes like a miracle to get everything to sound right. So I really, you know, there's a lot to be learned from that era, I think, still. And just the smartness and the arranging too, like Nelson Riddle. I mean, knowing, you know, arranging these notes, envisioning how it needs to be played with the dynamics and everything, and how things, you know, to make sure that everything he writes, it's like he's writing as an audio engineer.
Right.
Because that's where the mixing was in those days, is in the arrangement.
Yeah. So, Tony, tell us about the future. Do you have some projects that you're about to release? What are you working on now? You want to plug something?
Well, of course, I'm doing these daily videos, which is kind of a surprise development. I didn't intend, it wasn't my plan, like, oh, I'm home for an indefinite amount of time, I'm going to start doing these songs every day. It was just something that kind of happened. And after a few days of doing it, I decided to keep doing it. So there's that. Before this all happened, I was planning, I'd started work on arranging an all original big band and strings album. So the vision being a modern day, you know, Sinatra 1953 Capitol Records album, but not a tribute to that, in that, like, you know, because it's been recreated so many times. It's like, I don't need to do another big band version of Fly Me to the Moon or any of those, you know, and record it. It's already been done. So the idea was to take my songs and write some new songs, and give it the energy of what that was then, but through the lens of now, with brand new material. And I'm still into that, but it's awfully expensive. And I don't know that I can really plan to invest in that type of project right now. We'll see. So I'm also organizing a mass video collaboration among a lot of my peers in jazz and classic pop, to do a video that benefits the Actors Fund, which helps musicians, actors, other entertainers. It's what the AFM uses, is kind of an emergency fund for musicians. So A lot of my friends in jazz, Tierney Sutton and Bria Schoenberg, Benny Benack, Ann Hampton Calloway. I don't know, there's several. I mean, I'm waiting for recordings from more. But so the idea is just to put out this kind of mass collaboration that I'm producing, and just will help bring awareness to to what's happened to musicians and entertainers, but also entertain people and make them feel, entertained by us, even though we're all in our respective spaces, and also hopefully get some donations going to, because there's several people that I know that are in pretty dire need, because it's one thing to have gigs dry up over time, or to have scenes kind of fade out, like that's happened with like the cabaret scene in New York to some degree, where you can kind of see it coming. But this type of thing where we've all planned on income for the next 6 months to a year that is booked in the books, and all of a sudden went away, and that has been very scary and put a lot of people in dire straits. So
to my point earlier, when I was sort of jabbing at this essential worker thing, I believe that what it is that we do is essential. I believe that creating music and lifting people's spirit with music, I think that's essential. And what I hope that happens is that people are so clamoring and so missing it that once the quarantines are lifted, that it will just rush back and maybe even be a boom.
Well, yeah, my hope is that I know I'll appreciate things more. I mean, I feel like I never took for granted a moment I was on stage with a great orchestra, and I've had the privilege of being with so many. But I think getting back to it after this, I'll have a whole new appreciation for how fragile it is, and just for the ability for us to all gather in a beautiful hall and share a musical experience. I mean, right now it's literally not possible to do that without putting people's health at risk. And I think that I'll feel that way, and I feel like audiences will feel that way and feel like they want to get back out and hear live musicians play music in front of them again, and hopefully they will come out. I mean, I think the bigger overarching concern after this public health crisis is what it's going to do to the economy, because so many of these orchestras and institutions that I perform for, exist by the grace of private donors and corporations and people that feel like they have enough to give to support. And I hope that they still feel like they can do that.
Me too. Anything else that you want to say? We're going to definitely, I'm going to link your website in the description of this video so people can quickly find you online. And I trust your website probably has direct links to your Instagram and social media and stuff.
Does my website? It probably does somewhere. I have to double check.
Well, they'll be able to find you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one good thing about having a weird last name is that there's no other Tony DeSayers out there. So if you Google my name, you'll be able to find me pretty easily.
I don't know. There was about 20 of them on there. No, I'm teasing you. Well, Tony, this has been great. I appreciate your time and your energy. I pray for you and your family, and I pray that we, for our community, and I pray that we get through this thing and find ourselves in a better situation, even.
Yeah, amen to that.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me. It was great to chat, and we finally, even though we did physically share the same space, we didn't get to talk until now. So I look forward to hopefully seeing you on my return to Columbus, when we get back to it, and And I've heard that the Columbus Symphony wants me back too. So I hope that you're there when I come back, with them too.
Yeah, me too, man. I'm gonna send Byron a text saying, "Hey, this show, this is the one you want me on." So, all right, man. Well, you have
All
a
right.
good one. God bless you.
You too. All right. You too. Take care.
All right, bye.